Hello, I'm Dr. Lee Hildebrand, and I'm looking forward to talking about a very important topic today. I had somebody reach out to me recently and said, "Hey, I'd love to have you do a video on grief." So I'm looking forward to addressing that topic today and just giving you some pointers. If you're experiencing grief, that's something you're going through in your family or for yourself personally. So let's dive into this. Again, I'm Dr. Lee Hildebrand, Director of Lakeshore Psychology Services in Mequon, Wisconsin, life coach, speaker, and psychologist. And in regard to grief, there are different types of grief that people experience. And first of all, one of those is losing a loved one, the death of a loved one. This is one of the most difficult things that we deal with in life, right? Is the loss of a loved one. A second area that I see quite a bit is the loss of a relationship. This could be a romantic, it could be a divorce, the loss of a loving relationship, or conflict in relationship with a family member that leads to that relationship either being strained or discontinued. These are very painful losses. In addition to that, another thing that we experience grief in is loss of functioning. That could be losing something in regard to our health or mental capacity, something where we lose a certain amount of functioning that we once had. This could be a situation of an accident or something of that nature. Along those lines, I was greatly inspired recently by a video by a three-time Paralympic snowboard Olympian, and that is Amy Purdy, talking about some of the grief that she's experienced with loss, and then also the way that she turns that into positives. She was talking about one of the legs, the artificial legs that she was using, and as she was moving through some of the grief, she made the comment, she said, I'd never thought about it, but I realized I could be taller. I can pick whatever height I want to be. I mean, what an incredible angle to take in terms of taking something that we're grieving or that's difficult and turning it into a positive. Now, in regard to grief, there's a lot of theory related to grief. One of the most popular is theorist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And what she came up with were 5 distinct stages of grief or dying that she developed. The first one is denial, and that is really avoiding or denying the fact that something's really happening or that we're losing someone or something. The next category is anger, which is pretty self-explanatory. Being angry, upset in the situation. The next phase she talks about is bargaining. And what that means is negotiating with the situation. It might be trying to bargain with God. Hey, if you just, save my brother from this cancer, then I promise I'll really devote my life, to helping with cancer research as an example. And then the next category she refers to is depression. And depression obviously is feeling just dejected, low, down, etc. And then she talks about moving into a phase of acceptance. A phase of seeing the reality for whatever that loss is and coming to terms with that and accepting it. Now, in regard to this theory, I must say that I think it hints at that there's this progression through these phases. And some people read this and they assume that. And I want to say today that I'm going to make 8 points about grief. And my number one is your path is not linear. Even though there's a theory like this out there, I've never seen a situation where it goes exactly according to this pathway. In terms of your own grief, it's going to be unique to you. You're going to experience a fluctuation of feelings. You could experience all of these within a given day or a week. So please understand that your pathway in terms of your grieving is going to be unique to you. Number 2, there is no timeline for you in regard to grief. I often will hear people say to me that, man, I should be over this by now. Or it's been 6 months, you would think I wouldn't be feeling that way. Please understand, there's no timeline. Your timeline is that you're going to continue to grieve to the rate and extent that's going to be the right fit for you. There is no timeline, there's no societal timeline. You're going to continue to improve, or the grief is going to continue to become less intense when it becomes less intense. Now, there's things that can help in this process, and that brings me to number 3. Talk with safe and appropriate people about your grief. Cry. Cry with other people. Feel the sadness. Allow yourself the permission to feel the emotion. Don't internalize the emotion. People that internalize the emotion, sometimes it can make the healing process in regard to grief more slow and not as healthy. Number 4, let yourself grieve. Don't blame yourself for a situation that you're grieving and try to turn it in on yourself. I think why we do this humanly is that grief is so painful and loss is so painful that the intensity of the pain is so much that sometimes it feels like we have more power and control of it if we turn it inward on ourselves and either blame ourselves, criticize ourselves. The classic situation with this is losing a loved one or losing something or a relationship and playing the tape over and over again saying, if I just would have done this, they would have been okay, or they would have known that I really loved them. I hear those kind of regrets all the time. And I'm here to tell you, it's important not to blame yourself. And here's part of why. The things you realize about the situation now, you didn't realize in that past moment. And in a lot of cases, you didn't realize that they were going to pass away or die in the timeline that they did. Sometimes there's sudden, I have clients that have faced sudden deaths, even suicides of family members, and they play the tape over and over again, trying to find some way that there was an angle that they could have done something. And I submit to you, hindsight is a rigged game. We did not know, we don't know at that point in time, in that situation, what we know now when we're doing the replay. And it's really not fair. So be gentle and understanding on yourself in regard to that. I will say that 9 out of 10 times that people feel that blaming or that regret at themselves for either doing or not doing something, when we look at it together and step back from it, they really did try to do the best that they could in that moment for the situation. So don't turn it on yourself and blame yourself. Number 5, in regard to grieving, the pain will change over time. If you've lost someone you love very much, it's not ever going to completely go away. And that's okay. But the pain will change in the intensity if you continue to allow yourself to grieve, you talk about things, you cope in healthy ways. The dial, if you will, in terms of that pain will turn down over time. Your grief and your pain will change. And usually it's in a direction where it feels more manageable. So if you've just experienced a loss, please know it won't always be this intense. Number 6, use creativity in how you mourn, how you grieve, and subsequently how you celebrate or connect with the meaning of the loss or the person that was there. For myself, I had talk about loss of function, I had a tremendously bad softball accident where I tore my ankle up tremendously. I had 2 surgeries. This was about 10 years ago. 2 surgeries, and I could not put any weight bearing for 6 months. Now, I was very active. I continue to be very active, which I'm thankful about. But one of the ways I was creative is I just really focused on what is a way to celebrate once I did all of the rehab, etc., just kind of being back and having that attitude that I wanted to continue forward with where I was at. So I went back to that exact softball field months and months later, and I ran those bases again. Nobody was there. There were no witnesses. It was a ritual for myself. Another example of this, when I lost a very dear patient. She unfortunately died of cancer and was such a beautiful human being. Shortly after her loss, I went to Arizona with my son, and we climbed the highest point in Arizona at Mount Humphreys, and it was in March and it was snow covered. It was an incredible climb. And I'll never forget, when I was standing at the top, I could see the Grand Canyon in the distance, and I thought about this person. And I literally, as I'm looking and feeling the wind blowing in my face, my son was off in the distance, so I had privacy and no one could hear me, as I said goodbye to her from the top of a mountaintop. I celebrated her life and who she was. I did that mountain to honor her, and I said goodbye. That was a powerful experience. So find creative ways to memorialize those that you've lost, to remember, to experience the nostalgia of so much of the beauty about them that was there. And then also to help yourself emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically to continue to move forward and to live. Number 7, don't use substances or other unhealthy ways to cope with grief. That can become a slippery slope. And I've had clients find themselves creating a new problem in their lives because they didn't cope with their grief in a healthy way. So I want to encourage you not to fall into that trap. And point number 8, and this is going to be my last focus on this for our time today, that is, don't do it alone. Don't grieve alone. Don't try to internalize this and go through this all by yourself. Whether it be the loss of a loved one or a relationship that ended disappointedly, or some physical or health event where you're experiencing loss yourself. It may even be that you see that you're passing maybe sooner than you thought it might be. Don't go through it alone. Reach out to people. Reach out to your team. Reach out to your family members. Safe and appropriate and trusted people that you know are going to come to you not with pity, because nobody wants pity that's experiencing loss. No, people that are going to come to you with compassion and understanding. And obviously, if you want to get someone on your team that can help from a professional standpoint, feel free to reach out to a psychologist or a counselor. They can be very helpful in a situation like that as well, as we're walking through these situations in life. Grieving is a natural part of life. We become attached to one another and attached to things, attached to who we are and how we function. And it's important to know how to best be gentle with ourselves and approach the process of grieving. I hope you found this helpful today. If you're walking through something of that nature, please feel free to share this video with anyone that you think it could help. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel if you'd like. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up like. And I wish you well. Thank you again.